Good morning and welcome to the Football Digest weekly podcast. Thanks so much indeed for joining us this week. I'm in esteemed company again with my colleague, Chief Sports Writer of the Daily Mirror, Andy Dunn, Jeremy Cross, Chief Sports Writer of the Daily Star, and Matt Dunn, who, for those of you who are watching the show rather than just listening, well, maybe we should just rechristen him Magnum PI. What a wonderful shirt, Matt. Brightening up our days. Yeah, it makes me think of that. What was the Fantasy Island? The plane. But a wonderful shot of summer and one to get us thinking about summer holidays. Anyway, but no, it's nice to see you all. And obviously we're on international duty, all of us going to Wembley tonight. So looking forward to that as England begin their World Cup campaign. But also look back upon sort of the past week of action, which was again defining for Manchester United and potentially also for Chelsea moving forward. So guys, let's kick off with some of that before we sort of maybe talk England and have a little look at sort of a few Frank Worthington memories as well. Very sad passing of that. Of a really great player this week. We're incredibly sad to see that. But let's look at really the FA Cup fallout and perhaps also another shot at silverware gone for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Andy, you and I were at Leicester on Sunday, weren't we, at the King Power? And basically, I do have to say, it didn't feel a bit lukewarm. It was United crashed out without a whimper, really, and it felt like the criticism afterwards was far greater than the kind of the passion shown by United during the game.
Completely agree. Absolutely agree. I mean, the tone was set when you got there and you got the team sheets, and okay, United had played on Thursday night, but this was the FA Cup. This is the FA Cup quarter final. They won game from, as they are now, from Wembley. They haven't won a trophy since 2017.
Yeah,
and then you've got the team sheet, and you see Tellers at left back when Luke Shaw has been in the absolute form of his life, and you see no Bruno Fernandes, and you're just looking at it thinking, okay, we know they played Thursday nights, but if they get tired, then take them off. They're going away on an international break. The FA Cup must, surely it still means everything to a club like Manchester United. And you got the impression that it didn't. And then that set the tone for the game, because for the first half, certainly, and for most of the second half, even after he made the 4 substitutions, they started the game as though it was anything but an FA Cup quarter-final. They started the game as though it was a kickabout. They were so far off the pace for that. Fred was so far off the pace. Harry Maguire was so far off the pace. They started the game as though, so lax. And that's why, as you say, you got the feeling that there was no urgency, there was no jeopardy, there was no do or die. It's like, and then you start thinking to yourself, well, you then allow yourself to think of the broader issues. They, probably 2 days previously, they got through in Milan. They'd also announced a new shirt sponsor, for £47 million a year. And then you start thinking, well, that might have been their cup final. A new noodle partner might be their cup final or whatever. And it's hard not to escape the fact or escape the feeling that FA Cup quarter final, for one reason or another, the mentality that maybe filters down from the board, from Ed Woodward and Richard Arnold and right down through the club, the mentality wasn't, we want to win this at all costs. We are desperate to win this football match. And from the lineup he put out, from the attitude the players demonstrated, from the way they performed, they simply did not look as desperate to win that match as Leicester City did.
No, it was remarkable.
And if I'm a Manchester United fan, I'd be absolutely furious at that.
Yeah,
the good news is, though, they've frozen season ticket prices for the 10th season.
Let's hope that they can actually get in to see a bit of football. That's the thing. I mean,
the difference is good. I mean, Andy, you were the night before we were both at Goodison, weren't we?
Yes.
And watched City, and although City weren't at their flowing best and produced the football we know they can do, they were still dominant in that game. Everton tried to bully them a bit and be physical, and it just didn't work.
Spot on.
And you just felt that there was a goal coming, and eventually they scored twice in the last 6 or 7 minutes and went through. And that's a team which is has won so many things over the last few years. in that same period where Man United haven't won a single thing. I just thought there was a stark contrast in desire and belief and determination. You know, City are relentless. They want to win all 4 trophies. Where, you know, they've already got one in the bag in terms of the title, because it'll take a remarkable collapse for them to be caught now. So I just think it all stems from the manager.
Yeah,
they're being driven by Guardiola, and United are being driven by Ollie, who's at the wheel. But the wheels are.
It was amazing. It was amazing, Matt. I don't know whether you saw it, but you know, Andy and I were talking about it. Andy was right to raise it. What Solskjaer said last week about trophies and about sort of kind of being basically ego trips for managers, weren't they? And the kind of, you know, he was obviously suggesting that the sort of the long-term target building of the club is more important than basically domestic silverware. I don't know whether United fans view it like that, do they? I mean, certainly not traditionalists. I mean, you know, everyone knows how much I love the FA Cup. I mean, surely the FA Cup is worth it's worth winning for Manchester United.
That might be what they want to hear up in the boardroom, but that's certainly definitely not what the fans want to hear, is it? You know, they want their glory days. Their, you know, even if it is, you know, a sort of a lax period compared to the Fergie years, you want the occasional success, something to sort of remember, you know, when you look back on this era. And yeah, I'm not quite sure someone who claims to be so well versed in the feelings around the club, why Ollie Gunnar Solskjaer has allowed himself to be duped into sort of trotting out this kind of stuff. Because the one thing he does seem to have is his finger on the pulse of the culture at Manchester United. And no, that's just completely offbeat.
Yeah, but he's not alone, no, Matt, is he? In being duped into this top 4-itis, is he? You know, I mean...
Oh, no, but I mean, the thing about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is he feels he understands what the club's about. That's his selling point as a manager, because it's certainly not his tactical acumen.
Exactly. And if anyone knows what you know, winning cup competitions means to Manchester United, then clearly it should be him. But I agree. I think he's got sucked into this idea, you know, that has been fairly long established now, that, you know, top 4 is the be all and end all. And I guess if he finishes in the top 4, then he'll stay in the job. But Jeremy made a good point about the contrast between City and United. I mean, Everton were absolutely, you know, really up for that game on Saturday night. You know, they were so intense. I mean, Guardiola said, didn't he, that he's got into this little habit now, hasn't he, of sat in the dugout before a game on his own, watching the other team warm up, not quite like Klopp does, who stands out on the pitch doing it, but Guardiola does. And he remarked that Everton was so pumped up in the warm-up, was so, you know, hyped up for the game, you know, he told his players. And, you know, that was the sort of game that he thought, and we've seen Everton do it to City before, you know, 2 or 3 seasons ago, whenever the 4-0, what was it, 4-0? What was the... And, you know, that could have been the game. They could have wilted a little bit in the face of Everton's unbelievably physical, fast, athletic stars. You know, there's 3 men on every man. But they didn't. They stood up and were counted. And I just feel that United didn't stand up to be counted in that game, in that quarter-final. And yes, we did mention, John, sort of, you know, in the sort of, you know, the post-match comments that we made, the stuff that the newspapers went on. But I genuinely think that, you know, I'm not saying it was a shrug of the shoulders, but it wasn't far off from Solskjaer. You know, we were a bit tired. Games caught up with us. I mean, that was, you know, as I say, it was almost a shrug. It was almost, well, you know what, I had to rest a couple. We were knackered after Thursday. Played a lot of games. Boys have played very well. And, you know, one game.
The thing is as well, Dunn,
I'll tell you what, I don't know how that washes. I don't.
When you look at the draw as well, how that panned out with City drawing Chelsea, that you know, you'd really back United to have beat Southampton in the semi-final, get to a final.
And they knew that at half time.
That's worrying.
Yeah, 1 at half time.
Yeah, don't get me started on that. But it's ridiculous, isn't it? Yeah, with respect to Southampton, while showing them no respect at all, Jeremy, I hasten to add. Anyone that prefaces the sentence with no disrespect to, you're about to show them the ultimate disrespect. I like Southampton, by the way, and I think Southampton actually would. I think will be. I think will be Leicester, do you? I think it will be a tight game. Yeah, I think that I actually think that basically Leicester will be favourites. Of course they will, but I actually think that basically Southampton on occasion this season have played some terrific stuff. If they can get some players back and get some kind of form back in the next couple of weeks or so, then you know, don't write them off. I have to say, I think Leicester. I mean, what a season they are having. They are, you know, top 4. FA Cup semi-final. They've been absolutely beset by injuries. Brendan Rodgers, what a job he does. It's quite funny, actually. Basically, he always has this sort of immediate post-match interview, doesn't he? I'm sure Andy was listening in, but basically with the local radio guy, who's a very good guy, actually. But basically, shall we say, it's very local radio and sort of kind of, shall we say, banging the drum for Leicester City, as I'm sure anyone tuning in.
First, did they, or something?
Well, yeah. No one could get a question in because we had to wait until they'd done the travel bulletin. But basically, BBC Radio Leicester. If you're going to tune into BBC Radio Leicester, I would suggest that you're going to be a Leicester City fan if you're going to listen to the coverage. So I completely understand the angle they're coming from. Although one of our brethren did actually address Brendan and say, "I'm not going to be a cheerleader like the last bloke," and it brought down the house. But actually, do you know what? I actually think Brendan Rodgers probably does deserve a cheerleader because the job he's doing is absolutely sensational. If they finish top 4 and win the FA Cup, and I think that basically they are almost an example to Man United. Man United saying, "Well, you can't juggle everything." Well, I know Leicester have gone out the Europa League, but only in the last round, which would suggest to me that, if Leicester can do it, then why not Man United? We are talking Man United. It's astonishing there. And I think
it'd be massive for Rodgers, wouldn't it, to win the FA Cup? It'd be a huge thing to put on his CV because obviously he had so much success in Scotland when he went there after the Liverpool thing turned sour. But I always thought he needed to come back and prove himself in the Premier League again. He did a great job at Liverpool. Came within one slip of probably winning the title. So it's good to see him succeeding. And he's, if he starts winning things with Leicester, then the world's his oyster, and he can probably line up a really, really big job. In the
you're saying Leicester is
distant future.
And
Leicester isn't.
Well, look, with respect to Leicester, as wonderful a story as they have been over the last 5 or 6 years, they're never going to be on a par with the likes of City or Liverpool or United, are they? That's just a fact. So
they are. Bearing in mind their training ground, they are in danger of usurping clubs like Arsenal, Tottenham.
I think Tottenham have probably got a decent training ground, though, haven't they?
They have got a decent training ground, but you know where I'm coming from. Leicester have been happily stationed. Leicester have been happily stationed in the top 4 all season.
Yeah,
and I just think, what a job!
He's brought some great players through, hasn't he? They've got some wonderful young players at Leicester at the minute. A few are injured.
He's got Iheanacho going again.
What about this then, Crossy? But if Southgate stood down as England manager after the World Cup in Qatar, would Rodgers be a shout?
Well, I think he was in the conversation. I think last time, wasn't he? And then basically, I don't think basically he got onto the next sentence in that conversation. Albeit, look, I personally, I think not. I would say that I think that he's driven by club management still, and that's going to be something because. I do agree ultimately with you, Jeremy, in that basically I think he's probably going to, he'll have another crack at a bigger club in the Premier League. It'd been crazy not to give him a chance. He does such a good job,
I mean, he does, and I've always admired Brendan. But let's face it, he blew it last year. We seem to have short memories. And he blew top 4 last season.
Injuries.
He blew top 4 last season, man. I don't care whether it was injuries or whatever. Leicester should have finished top 4 last season. We know that. And he blew it. I mean that is as simple as that. There's no getting away from that. And now, obviously, he's doing a fine job now. Let's wait and see if he finishes top 4. And as regards to England, I think he'd be great. But I'm with you. I mean, for a couple of reasons. One, I think, he loves the day-to-day. And secondly, as well, England cannot afford to go around spending fortunes on the next England manager post-pandemic. The FA have laid an awful lot of people off. Staff have gone. So you're not going to go around throwing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 million pounds at a new manager. And that's the sort of money that club managers will still be able to command. So you would have to take a fair old pay cut if you were wanting to take that England job. But it's not as though Brendan is in the same situation as Gareth was when he took the job. Gareth wasn't, never going to be in demand by a big 6 club Not many clubs really, let's be honest, when he took the England job. So I think that would be a practical sticking point as well. But as regards this season, let's just see if he stays in the top four like last season.
Oh, you little teaser. Anyway, I know who's I know who's going to be. I know
because the number one darling
who's going to be
the
next England manager.
Has he filled the void left by Frank?
100%.
It's not you, is it?
It's so obvious. No, it's not me because I could never be as convincing and brilliant at talking as Gareth Southgate is. I love the kind of that pride that he summons up in playing for England and what England means. But I'm absolutely, there's no doubt about it in my mind who the next England manager will be, and that is Graham Potter.
Right.
I think Graham Potter is cut from the same cloth of calmness as Gareth Southgate. He tries to play good football. He is, very, very good with the media. It's kind of sets a nice tone. He probably not, he's done an excellent job at Brighton. Please don't get me wrong. So I'm not deriding that at all. But he's not set the world alight, if you like, but he's had a really good club career. Again, it's just so similar to Gareth. And Gareth has been such a success for England, such a brilliant, inspirational manager and appointment. In my view,
to be fair, John,
basically they'll have to take following the same template.
Crossie's in an incredibly positive mood this morning, isn't
Potter
he?
might need a new job this summer if Brighton get relegated.
They're not going to get relegated.
There you go, mate. Yeah.
They are not going
Steve
to get
Bruce,
relegated.
he might be
no chance. Yeah, we should come on to him. Anyway, listen, we'll go back to the point in hand, and I do have to say we always look to our kind of the messages, and one regular friend of ours, Ethan Henson, does make the point here: can Manchester United ever win the Premier League with Fred in midfield? Which I have to say is a great point, but also brings us on to a wider point: is Man United, their squad, their lack of depth, I think is the thing holding them back, isn't it?
Yeah, the problem with Fred is, look, he's a workman-like player. He'll do a job for you, but they've got Fred, they've got McTominay, they've got Nemanja Matic. They're all the same. They all do the same job, basically. They are holding midfielders. You don't need three of that type of player in that squad. So there's an imbalance in midfield. There's obviously doubts about Pogba still. Will he stay or will he leave in the summer? And he came on, didn't he, and changed the game in Milan last week and had a wonderful sort of cameo appearance. Scored a winning goal that got them through. So there's so much up in the air with United. Will Cavani leave? They're going to have to sign a new striker. If they do sign a striker, who will they sign? Do they need to make a statement with that? Do they try and get Haaland? Would Haaland want to go to United? He's probably going to have the pick of wherever he wants to go in the world in the summer. If he chooses to leave Dortmund, would he pick United over City, for example, or even Chelsea? He'll go where he thinks he's got the best chance of winning the title, and that's not United. That's the issue. So, they're still weak at the back, really. I know Maguire's the captain and everything, but he's susceptible to pace, is Maguire. They need someone alongside him who's really, really quick, a good, really quick centre back. So, and they don't have the depth needed to challenge for the title, which is why Maguire's having to play every game. Rashford's obviously is injured at the minute, but he's obviously been flogged to death and playing through the pain barrier. So it's just not good for players. City don't have to do that. They've been very lucky with injuries. Like Dunny said the other week, it's remarkable how they've got every player fit and available in nearly April, which is amazing. So, but Gardo doesn't have to flog his players to death. He can pick and choose. He can give them a break. He left Sterling out of the squad altogether, didn't he, last weekend? So the weekend before, sorry. So that's the difference, and United need to look at that. But the issue is, obviously, they don't have the spending power of City. The Glazers do not want to spend on a similar level to what City do, or even Chelsea do. They just all they want to do is take money out of the club, not spend it. So that the issue for United, which has always been for the last decade or more, is the Glazers own the club, and that is the crux of the problem in terms of moving forward and how ambitious they are, and can they ever get back to being the number one team in England and Europe?
No, it's a fascinating one. We should touch on also, Chelsea, just their progress under Thomas Tuchel has just been nothing short of remarkable, isn't it? Really, I mean, I back them to to nick 4th place now. They're in the FA Cup semi-final. You know, they're up against it clearly in the draw. But, you know, the job, Matt, that Tuchel has done has been remarkable, hasn't it, really? What's he brought to Stamford Bridge? What's he brought to the Premier League, Tuchel?
One of the main things he's brought is a lot of energy. I mean, he is very much an impact manager. And you'd expect wherever he went, the first 5-6 games, things to pick up because he is demanding. He gets in the face of players. He tells them exactly what he wants. And, you know, he has a plan. The measure of Tuchel is going to be when they have their first slump. And can he dig them out of that? Or will his abrasive style start, you know, setting up factions within a very difficult dressing room, you know, to manage because there's so many talented players who aren't getting as many games as they want. And that, as we all know, is the sort of poison that affects quite a lot of clubs. But he's been superb. You know, he's been honest, which I think is what they need down there at Stamford Bridge, a bit of honesty. And they weren't very good against Sheffield United. They got through 2-0, flattered them. It was typical of Sheffield United's season that just a couple of inches here and there would have made a massive difference. I still don't know how David McGoldrick missed that chance. And it could all suddenly be different. But he's got this momentum, 14 games now, you know, and it just keeps going on. And eventually, as we found out with Manchester City, that run will come to an end. And that's when, you know, if Chelsea bounce back from that, then and can do it quickly, then they will be formidable opponents to try and finish ahead of if you want to be in that top 4 places. But yeah, I mean, as it's been proved week after week, it was a great appointment at the right time to give some energy into Chelsea's season. And when they look to be drifting towards sort of nothing much, hey, I wouldn't rule them out for the Champions League either because he's got an uncanny knack of being able to dig out a result even when they don't deserve it. I mean, they're by no means the best team in the competition, but you know, someone's got to beat them to put them out, and that's going to be no mean feat.
Yeah, I would say they've probably drawn the weakest side.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Listen, there's not many sides can sort of dismiss Atletico Madrid, you know, quite as comfortably as they did. You know, Atletico Madrid went without a complaint, without a whimper, which I don't think you can say that about a Diego.
Very much second best, weren't they?
Very much, and they admitted it, you know, which I say was even more astonishing. Let's face it, Thomas Tuchel was extremely lucky, extremely fortunate. It's not often you can walk into a club with that sort of squad, that sort of talent, and pick up the reins there. Usually you're coming in to fight fires. Usually you're coming in to reorganize or replenish a poorly assembled squad. He was doing none of the sort. He was coming in, it was ready made for him. You know, there was a great squad, great selection of players, you know, a brilliant setup there. And the only thing, unfortunately, from certainly from an English point of view, was that Frank Lampard was not doing a very good job. And, you know, Tuchel was fortunate to come in there. And I'm not saying that anyone could have done it, but certainly someone of that caliber comes in, and no wonder he jumped at the chance because, you know, you just look at that and you think, well, hang on a minute. And then you look at the fixture list also ahead of you and you think to yourself, I'm on a winner here, really. You know, if I can't get this team winning football matches, and keeping clean sheets more to the point, and not conceding goals, then I'm not a manager. Because a good coach, don't forget, a really good, experienced coach starts from that base point of not losing games, of not conceding goals. You know, and that is where, with Frank's inexperience, you know, the season that he was hailed for as his debut season in the Premier League as a manager was widely lauded for. I'm not going to. His team conceded 54 goals. I don't know, it was 54, 53. Anyway, around that, mid 50 goals in the Premier League. 50 plus goals. Now that, I'm sorry, that just does not win you titles. That just doesn't keep you in the job as an elite manager. And that's what elite managers, seasoned managers do straight away. You know, whether you like it or not, they will make sure that you don't concede goals. You certainly don't concede too many goals. And that's what Tuchel's done. It's organisation. It's not as pretty as what's gone before. It's not as exciting as what's gone before. But exciting for Chelsea fans is winning match after match and getting through to the Champions League quarter-final, getting through to the FA Cup semi-final, and making your way up the league relentlessly. And as I say, it's not rocket science, it's organisation, it's experience, and it was just a great job for him that as I say, he probably couldn't believe his luck.
You're just saying all that to wind me up, aren't you?
I'm not.
You really are.
What can you possibly disagree with?
Well, because Frank Lampard, I think, did a really good job.
I think he did a good job, but
the reason they're in the Champions League quarterfinals is because of Frank Lampard, and Frank Lampard got them into the Champions League while under a transfer ban. I'm sorry, I just don't get
Tuchel hasn't signed many players.
It's been, the change of manager, fine. It's been borne out, and Chelsea, and this is what Chelsea do. And I thought Roman Abramovich gave a fascinating interview last week, but I do not agree with you on how bad Frank.
Crossy, where do you think
he did a really good job?
No, hang on, Crossy. But I didn't say he was bad. I said there was a fundamental flaw, and the fundamental flaw, call me old-fashioned, happens to be quite influential in football. He couldn't stop conceding goals. I mean, they couldn't stop conceding goals. That is just. There's no.
Yeah, I love you to bits, I love you to bits, pal. But we will have to respectfully disagree to
disagree. You're right, Andy.
Crossy, where do you think Lampard?
This guy's only conceded. How many goals this guy conceded now? Two. One of them was an own goal, wasn't it?
Yep.
I mean, it's just. I mean, you have to say. I mean, that's it. That is some going, isn't it? I mean, that really is some going, and to go from. Being such a porous, easy to score against team to being a team that doesn't concede. That's obviously going to win your games.
Crossy, where do you think Lampard will turn up next?
It's a really good question. It's a really good question.
Championship.
Well, it's a really good question. I do think that basically, will Crystal Palace become available?
Yeah.
What's going to happen? There's been a lot of talk about Celtic, isn't there? Kind of who will be next, but. It's worked out brilliantly for Steven Gerrard. So, I don't know. I think Crystal Palace might be an option because I think Roy Hodgson's done an amazing job. But time will come, and I think they're basically that club has been run really well by SteveParish. Makes really good decisions and choices against difficult situations, in the COVID situation that we've had for the last year, and Crystal Palace been well run as a football club. And
they've got an aging team, don't they?
They've got an aging team, but how on earth, as a chairman or a chief executive, how do you renew contracts in this season? Answer is you don't, because you have no idea what your budget is for the next TV deal. It's an impossible situation. I tell you, the only teams that have really look how many big contracts have been signed in the last 6 months. They've just not been done because players don't know what the budget is. Agents don't want to go there until they kind of can maximize their value. And then the clubs don't want to get into contract negotiations. It's so noticeable, guys, isn't it? That basically, think about it. We'd normally have these massive, great fanfare, big, the only one daft enough to sign a monster, absolute monster contract deal has been Arsenal with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. How's that going? And on that note, let's talk about Arsenal actually, because basically, it says here on the running order, brilliantly put together by our excellent producer on this occasion, Ned, basically saying let's talk about Arsenal. Jekyll and Hyde, great character to come back from 3-0 down, but awful to ever be in that position. I mean, it's just, who wants to take this one? Because it was an absolutely crazy mayhem.
I'll have a go. I
didn't see it.
All I'm going to do is say the same thing as Andy's just said, is call me old-fashioned, but they need to get the defence sorted out. I mean, it's as simple as that. I was lucky enough to speak to George Graham the other day, and he spoke about Arsenal and Arteta, and he said, it's his old upbringing. You get the defence sorted out, then you can start doing the rest of it on top of it. He's a big fan of Arteta as it happens. Thinks he will get it sorted. But you can't defend like Arsenal have been defending and do anything and build anything substantial in front of it. And yet they can occasionally turn it on, and West Ham have that tendency to shoot themselves in the foot as well a little bit. And I think they, like the old song, the bubbles bursting and everything, that it's very easy for them to lose belief that they are quite where they are. But yeah, for Arsenal to find themselves 3-0 down, it's just that's where Arteta, unless he sorts that problem out, like Tuchel has done at Chelsea, then they can't build anything of substantial in terms of finishing top four, winning trophies or anything. And I can't quite see how he's adding value at the moment to where we were a year ago under Unai Emery. Because until that defence is sorted out, Arsenal are going to continue to struggle, and it's as simple as that. Callum Chambers is suddenly back in the mix out of nowhere. Who knows? But it just seems like that wasn't the answer 5 years ago. what are they doing? They really need to have a big summer where they really think about laying down some foundations and really getting that back line sorted. Tierney's a fantastic player. They just need 3 other fantastic players to go with him.
Yeah. No, I do agree. Andy, you must have a solution for this, pal. Defense.
I haven't got a solution. I only watched the highlights of the game at West Ham on the weekend, so I couldn't really comment. I mean, I liked them. I think that I'd love to see Ødegaard sign permanently.
Yeah. Super player.
I just like the cut of his jib. He's a sort of a bit of an oasis of calm he appeared to be in that game, and there's just something about great left-footed players as well in midfield, isn't he? The way he spots openings and
they used to have a player like that, didn't they?
He did, yeah. I can't remember. He's doing well in Turkey at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah. Odegaard is fascinating, because he basically has divided opinion a little bit amongst us.
Yeah, well, early on I thought so. Yes, that was the case. Yeah.
Sort of kind of they wanted to see Smith Rowe, sort of rather than Odegaard.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, you can hopefully sort of kind of squeeze them both in, but Odegaard has really stepped to the fore in the last couple of games, and terrific.
Yeah, I like it. I think Arteta, I mean, if you go through statistically, his record, isn't stellar, but I just do think overall, without sort of, I don't know, without dampening expectations, it's tough at the top of that Premier League. I look around and I see Chelsea as relatively formidable. Manchester United, whatever, we say about them every week, have a good squad and have a lot of world-class players, Manchester City or City, and then we're not even mentioning the champions, Liverpool, Everton, with a huge amount of investment from Far Mashiri, Leicester City, who are invested heavily, and we seem to judge clubs now on training grounds, I notice. So, top. But you know what I'm saying? What I'm trying to say is that no longer, I think if what you're trying to say, or what maybe is a discussion now, is no longer how long for the big six, basically. How long can we keep using the phrase the big six? And how long can we safely say that Arsenal, Spurs, City, United, Liverpool and Chelsea constitute the big six? I guess that's probably commercially, so I guess that will continue. But in terms of the moment of on the pitch, then, Arsenal have got no divine right to be as one of those elite clubs. No.
Jezza, it's an interesting point in time, isn't it? Because, the big clubs are sort of talking about, I mean, while it's not, a breakaway, they are talking about the reform of the Champions League. And there's little nuances here and there, protected sort of qualification. It's geared to, an established elite here. Arsenal are in danger of slipping out of that established elite just at the wrong time, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Look, they are I think they're 9th in the table. So
they've been 10th. They've been 10th for about the last 4 months. Yeah, it feels like. So, and they've finally made progress into 9th. It's amazing.
The table. It's a cliche, but it doesn't lie, does it? The table. You are where you are on merit. So, and that is probably about right for Arsenal. They are a top 10 Premier League side. Yeah. They're nowhere near the top 4. I mean, when you think about it, it's not all doom and gloom because they've got some great young players, Arsenal. They've got Smith Rowe coming through, Saka, who I think is a wonderful player. You do. Tierney's been probably the best player, most consistent player this season. So there's a fulcrum of a youth and a future there. But there's just they need investment. That's like any club. Teams always need investment year on, year out. So, but will it come? We all know Kroenke, he's not a massive spender, is he? As chairman owners go. So, they will continue to be behind those above them unless that changes. And no matter how much time Arteta's got or he's given, he won't be able to. I hope he succeeds because he clearly has learned from a master in Guardiola. So, on paper, he looks like a good fit for Arsenal. He was played for them and was a wonderful player for them. But even if he's given 3 or 4 years, will he mould a team that's capable of challenging for the top 4? I just depressing for an Arsenal supporter, but I just can't see it happening. I just think the progress of the top teams is so rapid. And Arsenal, you just feel like they're on a treadmill of mediocrity, really.
Yeah.
You know, they win a few games, they lose one, they win a few more, they lose a couple. It's there's no consistency with them.
No, it's not. It's not. I have to say, the thing for me is not very good to watch either, which is always, don't mind if it's sometimes you get entertained.
The worry would be, obviously, if they do fall further and further behind, what will happen to the likes of Smith Rowe and Saka? I mean, I'm not saying they're going to leave this summer, but in a year's time, they might be looking around thinking, you know what, I'm out of here because I'm not going to win anything.
Yeah, the thing that worries me is about this. I know you say about the spending, but look at how much they have spent, and the owners have, underpinned it. They spent 72 million on Pepe. They spent. They basically broke the bank on deadline day to sign Thomas Partey. What's happening?
They gave Aubameyang a massive deal as well, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, you cannot say that basically. I think it's down to lack of support. You really can't.
Is that enough, though?
It's spending in the wrong. Let's hope that Partey comes good. I think he will, but he's been so beset by injuries. But Nicola Pepe, come on. 72.
That was a great cross. From what I saw,
he's finally discovered he's got another foot. Brilliant.
He put on a play for Lacazette to get a point that might get you into. I don't know. And listen, I know what you mean about Pepe, and
you might expect a little bit more for you.
You do, but you just maybe sometimes he's one of those players, isn't he? That one in every sort of 10 times you watch him, you think, there might be something there. Obviously not enough. Partey in particular, though, you would hope would come good. I mean, the most compelling evidence of seeing that was when they won at Old Trafford earlier this season. And Partey was absolutely sensational in that game. I think he got injured probably soon after or in that game. I can't remember. And was out for a while, but he was absolutely sensational in that game. And then you looked at him, you thought, that's a player who could have a really huge impact. So we shall wait and see. But let's go back to the original point that it isn't going to be easy because there's a lot of fierce opposition out there. It really is.
Yeah, no, I agree. Matt, let's move on to Spurs because they had a really significant victory and much needed win at Aston Villa after the incredibly difficult, week or so, basically. But in keeping with Tottenham's season, really ups and downs, probably Gareth Bale's comments this week have sort of kind of almost stirred the pot again, haven't they? Because it would feel, it looks certain that he's off at the end of the season. I mean, but on recent performances.
I don't think Gareth Bale should play for Tottenham again. I mean, I'm a little bit disappointed in Gareth Bale being so. I mean, to have used a club which served him so well in his development, in the manner that he kind of seemed to be crowing about using them. It was his attitude and it was only ever temporary. It was a little bit, I think, dismissive and disrespectful of Spurs and the opportunity he gave them. And to see those quotes when he's back in his home, back king of the castle again, back in Wales. Because let's get this right, he's not pulled up any trees since he's been back at Spurs. He's God back in South Wales, and we know that. And his performances justify that. They haven't done that at Spurs. He's not given them what they might have hoped for. And then to go back and say, well, obviously it was only ever temporary, and almost suggest that it would be beneath him to consider a longer stay at Spurs. I just don't think does him any favours at all. And I don't think it's really, I'd be a bit miffed if I was part of that Spurs setup that gave him that chance. And if I was Jose, he keeps on about having players who want to play for the club. Well, that's no sign that he wants to play. He's not interested in the future of Tottenham Hotspur, is he? He's interested in the future of Gareth Bale. He's probably counting down the days till the golf course is open. And looking forward.
You're open in Spain, mate.
Apart from you, Cross, obviously.
Probably woken up to that.
Golf.
A few sunny days. He thought, God, if I was back in Spain, I could be playing golf now. And he's ready to sort himself out with a nice move in the summer if that's how it works, or take another year's load of money to play golf and then wander off into his retirement. And I'm just hugely disappointed by the lack of sort of empathy he's shown with the Spurs fans, and also the lack of humility he's shown after he's done nothing on his return that we expected him to. Isn't he frustrated this week? In kind of, I didn't you think there was an element of him, his frustration spilling over. He's kind of subbed against Arsenal, only a sub against Zagreb. Because he wasn't doing anything. He's been good lately. He's had a few better games. He's been a flat track bully. Scored against the mighty Marine and Wickham and all the big clubs. No, I don't think he has. I really don't think he has. And when he's needing to come to the table, he hasn't. And he had that spell where things seem to be clicking with Kane. But then to throw all that back at the first opportunity and say, just when it seems to be working and after the patience has been shown, the tolerance has been shown, and he's got himself in a thing, at a time when Mourinho is bawling out the dressing room saying, I only want people here who are committed to the club, the attitude stinks. He goes straight onto international duty. We moan about players going to the continent and doing this and says, well, I don't really want to be there.
Are we going to redo? Are we going to redo that banner now? Wales, golf, Madrid, Spurs. Now, are we?
I think Bale needs to be the first one.
If you look at his comments,
listen. What did you expect? I mean, I know exactly.
I don't expect him to be brazen about it. That's what I think.
Yeah. But I mean,
in a craw.
I mean, one thing, and I don't want to go back onto an old subject, and this isn't strictly about loans within the Premier League, but listen, he's on loan. What part of on loan? When you borrow a player who isn't yours, what do you expect him? I mean, he is not your player. He is a Real Madrid player. Now, he's certainly not going to disrespect his employers who are paying his wages. He is not a Tottenham player. He has no affinity or loyalty to Tottenham. They don't pay his wages. They don't. No, it's clubs on. It was a long time ago since he was at Tottenham. Listen, he's won 4 Champions Leagues with Madrid. I mean, he's been there a long time. He's still under contract. He's on loan at Tottenham. It was a move of convenience, probably a nice bit of PR, or at least Daniel Levy probably thought it was good PR. No, look what we're doing. We're bringing back the prodigal son. Gareth Bale, I mean, Matt calls it brazen. He's been honest enough to say, well, I was coming back, to keep myself fit for the Euros with Wales. It was literally a move of convenience for all concerned. Anyone who thinks that he was going back out of some sort of some prodigal son who suddenly realised the end of his ways and wants to go back into the bosom of Spurs fans, none of whom are in the stadium, by the way. But it's like, that was never the case. It was a cold-hearted loan move, which, as I say, I don't agree with full stop. And then if you borrow a player, then if he turns out, actually, I've got no attachment to you really, other than the fact that you give me the chance to have a kick around now and again, then I've got no sympathy for them at all. But I do agree with Matt. I do think that I don't see the point now, really, of I mean, what I got the impression as well from what Jose said after the Aston Villa game, that there was an implication there towards sort of Bale, and particularly in the comments he made after defeat against Zagreb, and they were clearly
about squad players.
Yes, yes.
I actually thought it was more about kind of a few other.
Maybe.
If I'm
well,
honest,
his team selection though for Villa showed who he was talking about, didn't it? And you bring the club player Tanganga in, and you drop Gareth Bale, and suddenly Ali's gone again, and sort of thing.
The players.
The fact is, lads, Bale has used Tottenham as a tool with which to play. He's come back thinking, I'll get fit. I'll use Tottenham to get fit, play loads of games, be fit and ready to go for the Euros with Wales, because that's the only thing on his mind right now, isn't it? Being at the Euros with Wales this summer, and it's not panned out for him. For whatever reason, he had fitness issues, didn't he, when he first came back? But started 6 Premier League games. So it's not worked out how he wanted it to, and he's clearly cheesed off, to say the least, with Mourinho. But Matt's right. You shouldn't start discussing a club like that, because it's like taking the Michael in it, really. And he's got back to Wales with Wales, like Matt said. It's where he wants to be. That's where he's most comfortable. And he almost, actually, if you read what he said, he actually admitted he felt relieved to be out of the Spurs bubble and back with Wales again, which is quite damning, really. But it's just not going to pan out, is it? So
no.
And I just love a player that is so passionate about playing for his country. I love the romance of it. I love the way
playing for Spurs.
I know. The way they will love the way that the Welsh fans sort of idolise this player, the best and most successful British export of all time. Successfully, absolutely been amazing. Not the player he was. Let's be honest here. But what a player! What a career! What a fantastic talent!
Who's to say though? I mean, who is to say? I know there was some sort of rather fanciful front pages out in Spain. Well, we think they are. But what's to say that this summer the Real Madrid management doesn't change? That Zidane doesn't leave? We know Real Madrid have been known to change their manager on occasion. But what if he leaves? What if Ronaldo goes back? And what if they reconvene the Benzema, Bale, Ronaldo front line? It's not beyond the bounds of realms of. I was thinking BBC then, not beyond the realms of imagination. And if you're Gareth Bale and you've got a year left at Real Madrid, don't forget it's a fantastic place to be. I mean, no matter what its troubles, you are playing for Real Madrid. And you've been there for so long. That's an achievement already. What if he thinks, well, you know what? Fresh start after the Euros. Get back to Real Madrid for my final season, and he'll have been there for what? 8 years, something like that now? I don't know what would have been, something like that. Certainly the longest that any English player has been there. And that might be his swan song at Real Madrid, which, would be fantastic, rather than scrabbling around and put at Spurs and putting up with Jose's peccadillos.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. Guys, I really feel as if we should remember Frank Worthington. Very sad passing this week. I mean, sadly, incredibly ironically, he passed away on the same day. Obviously, there was a hearing into, head injuries and concussion, and he was diagnosed with, wasn't he, with dementia in 2016, and had a long illness, Frank Worthington. But really, if you mention Frank Worthington to anyone of a certain age, just think about that goal. I mean, it's just an amazing, what a life to lead, and what a fantastic, what a fabulous goal.
I didn't see him play live, but I've seen reams and reams of footage of him on video and TV and stuff like that. And just, I was asked to write his obituary earlier in the week. It's obviously a sad occasion because I had to write one for Peter Lorimer, who died the previous week, another legend of the game, And you just Google Frank, and the first thing that comes up is that goal against Ipswich, which was, one of many, many wonderful goals he scored that outlined how flamboyant and genial he was, really. He was compared to George Best, wasn't he, by some people. He had that much talent, and also it was his character, wasn't he? That famous story about him getting off the plane at Heathrow in a lime green velvet jacket, and then Ralph Ramsey just stood there shaking his head. He was joining up with England under 23. He's got a cowboy boots on, and a red silk shirt apparently when he strutted off the plane. So, I mean, he brought out a book, didn't he, about his life, which was quite colourful to say the least. But just a wonderful player and a sad loss. I mean, it's amazing. He only won 8 England caps, and he's one of many players in that era, like Peter Osgood and people like that, who didn't actually win that many caps for England. It's unbelievable when you think about it. Really.
Yeah, unbelievable talents. Has anyone seen that shoot Q&A?
Oh, yes. Most difficult opponent. Taxman.
Yes. It was the ex-wife. Oh, no, it was the taxman. Yes, taxman, the ex-wife.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
It was. And you like to think that those sort of Q&As will eventually come back, don't you? But, can you imagine now, Frank doing that Q&A, and in the meantime, in the modern era, Joe Hart, the reserve Spurs keeper, has his own social media team. I mean, Frank would have sat down and loved doing that. And now we're deflecting. Reserve Spurs keepers are asking have social media teams. I'm not just singling out Joe Hart for that. And that is an age that we're in. And you'd like to think that, as Jeremy says, we're at a stage now where, we're having to do, unfortunately, a lot of these jobs, these obituaries, because players of a certain age, who we grew up watching, are sadly passing away. And you just wonder, you like to think that throw it forward 20, 30 years, that the players will always be remembered like this. But, you just can't imagine now, can you, in 50 years' time of thinking of a character such as Frank Worthington. I mean, you can't, because the game's different and lifestyles are completely different. Relationships between players and journalists are completely different. There wouldn't have been a journalist, a contemporary of Frank's, a journalist of Frank's age, who wouldn't have gone out, when Frank was living a high life and, nightclubs and out and about and drinking. There wouldn't have been a journalist who wasn't with him at that time. That isn't the case now. I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. And that's why I think, you pick up the newspapers and you read such affectionate recollections of these guys. It's because it is almost from a bygone age. Players like Frank Worthington are. I think it's important as well, though. I mean, just on a serious note, it's important that you don't always think, well, here's the great thing about Frank. Is it he liked the drink and and he like whatever else. I think it's important to look at that goal and think, he was one heck of a footballer, an absolutely brilliant footballer, and that goal sums up what he was all about. Because apart from it being completely ingenious, it was also fantastic technique, and also and secondly, what I would say about him is that you were unlucky if you weren't supporting a club that Frank didn't play for. Because he had enough, didn't he? Like,
20 odd clubs, didn't he? Yeah.
It was unbelievable. And the fact is that just showed again a guy who just, you're not going to get great players now, really great players who in their late 30s, early 40s, are going to be going around playing in non-league like Frank did.
It's sad actually, Crossy, because I actually put this in my obituary when I wrote it. I said it, because there'll be a generation of football followers, young generation, who probably what I've ever seen him play, even on clips. So I said, if you've not seen that goal he scored, Google it, because it's one of the greatest goals ever seen on these shores. You don't really see goals like that now, do you? You see wonderful team goals, and you don't see a bit of genius like that, like Gazza used to produce, or
exactly.
real people who just wanted to entertain. And ultimately, that's why we go to football matches, isn't it? To watch skill. And
of course we do.
And also, we can't.
Dele Alli actually scored.
He did actually,
a flip-up goal against sort of kind of against Crystal Palace. But funny you should say that, Jeremy, because I was listening to the radio, and basically a younger presenter, shall we say, said, to the older guest, basically, I've just sent you a clip of that goal. I wonder whether you remember that. And the kind of the older guest just started laughing because it's just at our age, or maybe a tad younger, and just think, well, that that's all. You think of Frank Worthington, you think of that goal, and it was just made me think, blimey, it's just kind of there's no fault on any side, but it's just that basically of a certain age, it's just you think of Frank Worthington, you think of wild. Nights out, sort of party lifestyle, and that goal. I mean, it's just astonishing.
Yes,
I find it somewhat bemusing, Andy, that you're suggesting that a younger generation of journalists, couldn't go out with footballers today. I mean, what do you think? They'd go out and just spend the whole night just talking about, about expected goals or something. What are you saying?
But they could talk about. No, I'm not saying. I'm not saying it's, and it's certainly not their fault. I mean, I'm sure we'd all love to. Still socialise in those circles. But I think it's more. I think it's more on the other side. The footballers aren't likely to call you up and say, do you fancy a pint? I mean, and for starts off, there's a far healthier lifestyle. I'm sure if we get onto famous England trips, that'll come up.
Yeah, is there? Let's see. Listen, look, guys. We're all at the game. To England game tonight. It's not just about tonight and San Marino. It's difficult, sort of, couple of fixtures. Albania away, I think is almost written off as a sort of an easy win for England. I'm not quite sure I see it like that. I think it'll be a little bit more difficult than that. And then Poland at Wembley next week is certainly more difficult. What do we think we might? This is the start of the World Cup journey, guys. So what do we think we'll learn over the next 6 days or so about Southgate and about his team and his squad, and where perhaps we're standing ahead of two major tournaments within the space of 18 months?
I think we'll see a lot more what Phil Foden can do for England.
I think he'll be on the bench tonight, by the way.
Yeah, well,
sorry.
but I mean, over the 3 games,
no, I agree with you.
I think we've got some chances to do something going forward. To show our nerve at the back, I think we might see a back four coming back again, which I think England are going to need if they're going to do anything.
Yep.
I think Southgate wants that, and hopefully Stones back on his game. John Stones can help us do that. But I think we need to see. A few fringe players really step up and say there are a few places up for grabs now suddenly in that team for the finals in the summer. And I want to see some of these names that we mentioned really step up and say, no, that shirt's mine. I'm excited to see what Phil Foden can do, particularly. I think there's a few nervous people sat at home with injury, mentioning no Jack Grealish's, whatever, who can only go backwards, I think, this this week, hopefully, unless it's an absolute disaster. Let's put it this way: if we're talking about Jack Grealish at the end of this week, we've had a pretty miserable 8 days of football.
Yep.
Because this is a chance for those that are fit, and it's a cruel world in that regard, but it's a chance for those who are fit to say, no, that shirt is mine. And against a team like San Marino, I want them to play for 90 minutes and try and unlock a defence. If they can't unlock a defence like San Marino's, they're not going to unlock one that's better, and it's no good just rolling in 3 goals and then taking the foot off the pedal. I want to see how many times we can get past that defence tonight, and how many goals we can score. And I want the same sort of mentality to get the win, get a couple of goals in front in Albania, which we're capable of doing. I want 9 points out of the 3 games. Poland's to be, take any early storm. They do a really professional job, and let's see if we can get some goals going and show that we can unlock defences, not just rely on Harry Kane. Let's see what we can do, and let's see 11 players, whoever on the pitch at the time, really putting in a claim to try and say they're the ones that are going to make the nation proud this summer.
That's a solid team talk.
Totally.
So it's available on podcasts.
Solid
so
team
Gareth
talk,
can
that
play
one,
it
doesn't
tonight.
Yeah, I know. Rebel Raz. I love Matt's point about Phil Foden, because I think that basically, if we are going to, do well at the next 2 tournaments, I think Phil Foden's going to be absolutely such an amazing talent. Such an amazing
Phil Foden could do
world at his feet.
Phil Foden's good enough to do this summer what Gaza did in 1990.
Yeah, I agree. Foden is a special player. The problem we've got is it's a great problem to have. Where do you play? Where's his best position? Where you can maximise his ability to open up a defence, which is what
Where is it, Jeremy?
I don't know. I mean, he's played in various positions for City. He's played as a false 9, a number 10. Played on the left. I think he's probably best coming in from the left. I don't know. He's so good. It sounds crazy to say, but he's such a comfortable player with the ball at his feet. You could stick him anywhere along the front.
Yeah,
and he would be brilliant.
Brilliant.
The problem is, you've got Grealish. Obviously, he's injured at the minute, but Grealish is a clamour for Grealish to be in the team. He was the star of the show, wasn't he, in November when we last watched England play? You've got other players like Sterling and Rashford. I think Kane is obviously guaranteed to lead the line. So, who are the best players to play off Kane? Because you've got the speed of Sterling and Rashford. They form a good 3, those 3, as we've seen countless times before. And Kane's a good link man as well. So, he's probably the best passer of the ball we've got in the team. So he's got some real big decisions to make. This is basically, these next 3 games are like trials for forget. I mean, look, the World Cup is the ultimate goal here to qualify, but they are essentially trial runs for who he picked for the Euros this summer. It's a strange scenario because of COVID, so the calendar's all higgledy-piggledy, but he's got lots, like Matt said, there's shirts up for grabs, the goalkeeper situation's a bit up in the air. Stones we expect to play. He's been fantastic. Maguire's probably guaranteed to start, isn't he, at the Euros? Who does he pick at left back? Will he pick Chilwell or Luke Shaw? Luke Shaw's probably been the most informed left back in the country of late. Right back's now an issue because obviously Trent's been bombed out of the squad, which took us all by surprise. And obviously midfield, I suppose if Henderson's fit, he would start at the Euros. Declan Rice is probably guaranteed to play. How many holding midfield players does he play against? It depends what opposition we're playing, doesn't it? My worry for England is these next 3 games, how much can we learn? Because with respect to San Marino and Albania, they are not, San Marino are the worst team in the world, aren't they? Official world rankings. So, we're on a hiding to nothing. If you don't win 5 or 6-0 tonight, it'll be disappointing. Like Matt said, we expect to see lots of goals. So he's got a lot of thinking to do, actually, Southgate, between now and June.
Yeah. I mean, just quickly, when Jeremy says Phil Foden can play anywhere, he's right. He could play in goal tonight against San Marino, couldn't he? I mean, never mind Nick Pope, the Pope could play in goal tonight against San Marino and not. I'm not being
colour piece later.
That's it. 4 bars already done there.
The intro going on.
But I think that's the thing about these 3 games is that I agree. I don't think it'll be a walk in the park in Tirana by any stretch of the imagination. They've had a couple of half decent results at home. I think they beat Belarus, didn't they, recently? They did lose to Lithuania, I think.
They've been campaigning to get fans in as well.
They have. I noticed that. I noticed the guy said, anyone who's at the jab in England could come over and watch it. As if it was just easy. All right, I'll just nip out to Tirana. I mean, he said this yesterday. If you've had a jab, you're welcome to come to Tirana. Blimey. Have you been to Tirana?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great city. I mean, listen, I would have loved to have gone back to Tirana to see how it.
Very cheap cigarettes, Dunny.
Very. I'm not very cheap. Everything, if I remember rightly. But it was. I thought it was just a great comment, as if suddenly you'd say, "Oh, great, I've had a jab. I'll pop over to Albania, easy as it is in these times." But yes, but there'll obviously be fans inside there, so I don't think that'll be as easy. And obviously, Poland are a decent team, so I don't think we should just think that we're going to breeze through all three. Obviously, we'll breeze through tonight. But the point I was going to make was that even though Albania might be tricky and Poland will present quite stiff opposition next Wednesday, what I think is that no one is unlikely to, really go on the front foot and provide an overly stern test of the defensive setup. And that's where, where there's obviously going into the Euros, and Jeremy's right, this is all about the Euros, this is all about June and July. And he's got to come up with his defensive setup, his best defensive lineup, because England will be tested at some point in the Euros, whether it be Croatia in the group stages, certainly if they progress. And that's what he's got to get right. He's got to get right. As Jeremy says, is it, he's been bold with Trent. Does he play the three? Still, you look at it and you think, well, hang on, is 3-4-3 the best? Does he play a back four? And the fact of the matter is that I don't think he's probably going to learn much about what's his best defensive setup in these three games. And we just have to live with that. Other than that, what we can expect and hope for is they continue doing what they've done for goodness knows, for as long as I can remember. They get through qualifying games. They win qualifying games. They don't get beat in qualifying games. I mean, that is just a fact of the matter. That is just a statistical fact that England and qualifying games are just, The
issue is,
they know how to get through them.
Crossy, is there a danger that when the Euros start, we might be a bit undercooked because we won't have played anyone that's really challenged us in the build-up? I know we're playing Austria, aren't we, before
Romania, isn't it?
Romania. So we go into the Euros this summer with high hopes, and justifiably so, because we are, in theory, one of the strongest teams in Europe now under Southgate. But there is that lingering question: Can we beat a France in a final or Spain in a semi-final? We're capable of producing one-off wins like we won in Spain when Sterling scored those wonderful goals. We're all there for that, and that was one of the best performances we've had under Southgate. But to win a tournament, you've got to beat probably three really good teams.
Yeah, and I think you also final. And I think you need the defence that picks itself. I think you need a system that picks itself and a defence that picks itself, a goalkeeper who picks himself. And whether that is the system of 3-4-3, whether it's a four at the back, I don't know. But you want a centre half. Realistically, we still don't know if, for example, he did play a four, what the natural centre half pairing would be. If he plays a three, we don't really know what the three would be. And I just think you need that going into a major tournament. Bennett.
It'd be very interesting, guys. We're going to finish with our and finally slot, and it's San Marino tonight. And I hope you put some thought into this, chaps. No. Look on your face, Jeremy. It's a bit of a blind panic.
No,
so I'll start with you, Matt. As it's San Marino tonight, the worst team statistically on the bottom of the FIFA rankings, so we're entitled to say I'm an old romantic, so I think they're entitled to their day in the sun at Wembley. A tale, please, of covering England against minnows. I prefer an international one if we can. I'll just give you a moment's thought while I recount the story about England playing in Kazakhstan, where basically it was a very surreal day. We had our traditional curtain raiser with the press match in the morning where Henry Winter famously headed past me in goal. And then basically, to our eternal shame, they showed it on the screen within the stadium before kickoff with commentary. And then actually sold the press seats
Yes.
So a few of us ended up watching on pitch side with a few hastily put together chairs, which I actually used as one of the
When was that?
avatar pictures.
Oh, that was
2008, 9?
Yes,
9, probably.
Yes,
9,
Almaty, wasn't it? Did you remember? The hotel was quite nice, wasn't it? Remember rightly? Remember, it was, yes, I remember that. But I'll let Matt go on, but it's not the first time. That used to happen quite a bit, didn't it, selling press seats?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
No, I've not really had any nightmare. I mean, I've been doing England a little less frequently, certainly on trips.
Yeah.
One thing I would say for San Marino is whatever they do tonight, they have a fantastic country to go back to. Our trip to San Marino in 2014 was that the last one. Was there
cricket on the beach with a certain England manager?
No, that was a previous trip, I think.
Was it?
Was it?
I believe so, maybe.
There's all sorts of fun and games on that.
But anyway, it's a fantastic country and a very pleasant small island within Italy to go to. But no, I've not really had any of the nightmares. There's Montenegro when at the end they're not really minnows, but that was a hell of a finish when Rooney got sent off and standing in the mix zone that had a roof across half of it, so the players were all in the dry and we were in the pouring rain. But no, I've been lucky on the back of beyond. I think FIFA regulations and whatever, and all the FIFA delegates that go to these games tend to tidy all these issues up a little bit more.
When you go to, I mean, we've all been all over the world, haven't we? We've been really lucky with our jobs, but you go to so many places, some bizarre places. You can't remember where you've been, can you? Because some of these qualifying group phases, you play some real back of beyond countries that you wouldn't ever imagine going to. But in terms of covering minnows, my outstanding memory, which is quite recent actually, is when we lost to Iceland in Nice. That was one of the worst nights covering England. And I remember I had to, because it was when we'd lost, I had to sort of basically scramble around and rewrite my match report and whatever. By the time I got down to the press conference with Roy Hodgson, he'd already resigned. So I walked in, and my colleague Dave Woods, my ex-colleague actually, Dave Woods, I said, "Well, has Roy been in yet?" I said, "Yeah, he's been in, mate. He's quit." So what? I missed it. I missed all the fun. I'm thinking, well, that's a blow. I would have liked to have seen that. And I remember in the mix zone afterwards, you guys were probably there. Joe Hart, actually, who had a nightmare that night. He stopped and talked to us in the mix zone. I've never seen a whiter player. He looked like he'd literally seen a ghost. He was sheet white. Fair play to him for stopping to try and front up, but he couldn't control what was coming out of his mouth. He was just in total shock.
Yeah, it was incredible. I always remember that afternoon I'd seen someone from the FA, and it was sort of like, if you remember going into that game, I think Roy Hodgson his future was a bit up in the air, wasn't it, anyway? But I think it basically, if he won that game, they'd have given him a new 2-year contract. You know, it was as simple as that. You kind of had a par in that tournament, reached the quarterfinals or something, and then on you go, Roy. You know, you've done okay, you reach par. And it was just like this conversation about, you know, saying, what's going to happen if we lose? You know, don't worry, don't be ridiculous. We're not going to lose.
It was, they'd lived through the group, though, if you remember.
I know.
It was just a terrible
started so well in the first game.
Yeah.
Played so well in the first game. Didn't end up winning it, and it was downhill from there. But Andy, come on.
But that's why, just going back to that, that's why the contract thing, you know, that's why, because of course, famously, they gave Fabio a contract ahead of 2010, just before we actually played the game, and then stunk the place out, if you remember, spectacularly. I mean, that was some trip. Yeah, I mean, Jeremy's right. We've been to so many places, you know, and I'm a bit older than you guys, and I've been to probably, you know, some, you can't quite remember them. I remember the Kazakhstan one, but I remember for the first time going to Azerbaijan in 2004 to Baku. I mean, it was just, and it was the unknown. It was great then, you know, when all these nations, when the old Soviet Union obviously splintered, and all these nations and the Balkans, you know, went into the were split up, and we all of a sudden we got to go to all these nations we'd never been to before, and it was just fantastic. I mean, it was great. I mean, not only recently, of course, you know, I thought the trip to Kosovo was brilliant.
Yeah,
you could have had a nicer trip, you know, a great city, but Baku was a trip into the unknown in 2004, I think it was. And it's just the same as you were saying about sort of facilities out there, but it was just brilliant. And so Baku was then, it was just starting. It wasn't like it is now, which is, you know, incredibly cosmopolitan, you know, 21st century city that is at the forefront, you know, of sport and commercialism and politics. Then it was just about sort of really establishing itself. But it was a little bit of the Wild East. I remember going out there. I don't know if any of you were on the trip.
Yeah, I was.
And it was in the days when we had a charter plane, and it was like a 5.5 hour, 6 hour flight. And we weren't arriving there till 11 in the evening. And obviously had no work to do when we got there. So we availed ourselves on the charter plane of refreshments, basically. I mean, there's no shame in that, because we weren't actually working when we got there. And I remember landing the sheeting rain, and it's a Baku, and you know about this. It's like the Wild East, wasn't it? And we got to the hotel, and I remember and as so often they do, they really roll out the red carpet for you. They really make you feel incredibly welcome. And the guy comes over, pours a glass of fizzy stuff, and he gives you a talk, about what to do and what not to do. And he basically said, at this time of night, one thing you shouldn't do is go down into downtown Baku, under any circumstances. So okay, mate. Half an hour later, there's three of us in a cab en route to downtown Baku, obviously. And we're armed with this information that we haven't got a clue about, Baku, but we're armed with this information that the US dollar is king, right? Even in one of the the furthest east of the old Soviet states. And so we offered this guy $100 US to not only take us into downtown Baku, but to stay with us and then bring us back. So we end up to this club, and we make this pact. I wouldn't tell you the other two guys' names. We'll make this pact that we'll stay together, and this guy stays together. We give him $100, and he takes us back. And we make this pact. And this club was absolutely one of the best clubs that you could ever imagine. It was just fantastic. It was like this sort of like Aladdin's cave in there. It was just brilliant. And sure enough, within 2 minutes, we were completely, utterly separated. Can't find each other, wandering off. And I'll just never forget ending up and playing ping pong in a leisure centre with some pals, new pals. And thinking, what's underneath? They laid out the red carpet. They took you back to the hotel, and they could not have been more welcoming. And that was like the template in a way for how these emerging nations in football treated the English press and the England football team, and in general the English fans, when you got to these places. We would read stories about it being inhospitable. We would read stories about it being dangerous. But inevitably, you go to places like Kazakhstan, like Azerbaijan, and the welcome there was absolutely brilliant. But as you say, then the game itself, by the way, you go to the press box, and obviously we are spoiled by our facilities. But, there's punters all over the seats, and you're not going up to these Azerbaijani punters and saying, "Excuse me, sir, you're in my seat there. I'd like to file some nice copy for the Sunday Mirror. Could you please move along?" It's like, and it was absolutely raining. I remember I think it was Michael Owen. I think England, as I say, normally as well, England find a way to win these games, don't they? Yeah. And I think they won 1-0.
I think it was 1-0. I remember it rained. It didn't stop raining.
It didn't stop raining from the moment we got there, John. It did not stop raining.
Well. And it was I remember sitting in this little shed on the stand.
Yes.
Do you remember?
It was the right hand side. No one scored there. I remember it vivid. And you couldn't. And it was, as I say, it was just, and it's the ironic thing is the more sort of, how should we put it? The more, I don't know, the more sensitive of our brigade. I actually think they're going to go in there and they're going to have some some reclining seat with power and Wi-Fi and sort of. It's like it's back. They haven't hosted this type of thing before. Of course, now you would, because this was just the beginning, almost 20 years ago, of their emergence onto the world sporting scene. And they now host major events, and there'll be a host at Euro for the Euro 2020. But it is. Then it was, you just had to get by. And let's face it, it wasn't really a hardship, was it?
No.
You went to Baku recently, didn't you, Crossy?
Yeah.
With Arsenal,
the Europa League final.
Didn't you have to run across a 6-lane highway?
Yes, I did. Yes, that was interesting. Yes, running across a 6-lane highway, thanks to our travel agent, to get a flight onto back to all sorts of bizarre places. The most ridiculous route to get on to fly onwards to the Champions League final, Madrid. Yeah. Wonderful few days when England, frankly. English football ruled Europe. Two Europa League finalists, 2 Champions League finalists. Wow, them were the days. So great times, guys. It's been great fun. Thanks so much for joining. I really enjoyed it, reminiscing about all sorts of stuff today. So really good fun. Hope everyone watching has enjoyed it, and be nice to see you same place, same time next week. Thank you.